Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We are going to announce the results for Grupa Kęty S.A. On behalf of the company, we have the whole management board of Grupa Kęty S.A. and the president of the management board, Mr. Lechowicz, who heads the flexible packaging segment, Rafał Lechowicz. We are going to start today's meeting as usual with the presentation part, and Mr. Dariusz Mańko, president of the management board, will start. The year 2022 has been a year in which we got to work in really extreme demand, maximum demand conditions for our products. We saw this in the extruded product segment, where we had record figures on the extruders. We sometimes were unable to even fulfill some orders for our customers. And it was an incredible year in terms of film, and actually we wouldn't have even hoped in the past to people queuing up for BOPP foil film, and so 30% profitability, and actually when we had assumed in the business plan for both machines, we'd assumed 13% profitability, which had already been very high, even too high for some, too high a task, because usually such businesses work at 9-10% profitability levels. So this use we made of the market, especially in H1, by the flexible packaging segment, was a master piece, really. What we managed to do there, and earning much more money for the shareholders than had been planned. So it was a feat, but in Q4 the demand deteriorated. At the same time, operationally speaking, you know that the company in Ukraine, well, it is working, but the problems there, especially with energy, you do realize this, and it is hard to include this asset among those that operate and bring profits. It's rather us, in a gesture of solidarity, we seek to help our colleagues from Borodianka, actually supplying all sorts of equipment to them, and foodstuffs and medicinal products, so as to relieve the suffering that has affected those people. As far as the investments are concerned, we performed certain shifts in the extruded products segment and in the aluminium systems segment in terms of this sort of plant manufacturing and warehouse facility, which is supposed to help us in logistics in the future. This happened in the last quarter, where we saw that the demand for our products was clearly decreasing. Now, looking at 2023, that's an oddity, because life tends to write different scenarios, and sometimes these are even amusing twists of fate, and this is what has been going on in the case of our group. As the president of the management board, please imagine that, for the first time in 13 years, 13 is not a terribly lucky number for some. For me, it has always been a lucky number. So for 13 years, we've always shown higher budgets, year on year, always going up. This is the first time we're showing a budget to you which assumes smaller results than the previous year. But as I said, twists of fate. Fate sometimes mocks you. 2022 was excellent for the group, and 2023 we're entering it with, unfortunately, we're entering a period of stagnation, of crisis. Well, people give it different names in different branches and industries. Varied information is flowing, but we relying mainly on the construction sector. We have to say that we are recording a clear decrease in demand for our products from that market in Q4, and we don't see any higher demand as we look into the future in Q1. Rather for BOPP, well, this has finished, to put it brusquely. The margins are lower, the order volume is lower, and we're starting to go back to normal, let's call it. And so we're back there fighting for the customer, fighting for orders. A good thing is that, the raw material situation has calmed down. We were unable to buy aluminium, we were unable to buy billets, and we had to actually fight for granulated product. But now these troubles are over, and RIN is available, and so this is good news. Raw materials are available. Other operational activity, towards the end of this quarter, we will actually activate another extruder, actually another press there. The EBITDA we're assuming, we see the cost, the financial expense will be higher due to inflation and obviously to the lending costs going up, or borrowing costs in our case. But this doesn't really change anything in terms of the contracts, in terms of agreements with the capital market, with you and with the shareholders. I just wanted to remind you that Grupa Kęty, every year it is awarded, it is recognized, and for years now it has been famous for being a transparent company. And it's just the budget we're bringing you for 2023 is just that. It could not have been otherwise. It's a budget created, developed just like over the last 13 years. I've been a president of management board forever now, and it's been. It's created by all our units, by every salesperson, by every head of production. These are partial budgets. They are built from the bottom up, and the individual departments, divisions, and then the segments contribute to that, and they all constitute Grupa Kęty and its budget. So we have no right. It's actually even subject to sanctions. It's punishable if we told you something else. Our salespeople tell us, well, sorry, boss. Customers, at least in Poland, 20, 30, 40, 50% fewer orders. And you are observing this. We're not in a glass bubble. We can see what's going on in the real estate development business, or in the construction business in general. There is a decline in sales in DIY stores, and it's not something we are, inventing here. It is the truth, and we have to approach it somehow. These tasks, the company has to face them and face up to them. So please believe me, this work that has been done by all those in this company responsible for creating the budget has been done very reliably, and it's been very robust. So we will continue our policy. We do not see any threat to the realization of our strategy, and we want to implement it, and we want to deliver on the results and our promises, what we promised in 2021 early on. So we believe that by 2025, EBITDA is 807 million. This is what we assume. It's not threatened. It's not at risk. So that's that, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe just to sum up, I'm wondering whether to do that, but maybe I'll tell you now. Okay. It's kind of weird for me, because when I talk to analysts, we've been wondering, because some of those who saw 1 billion, the figure, alongside Grupa Kęty, they thought, okay, that's now here to stay. But it makes one wonder when people do this, because sometimes we have to think, well, BOPP film, whether you sell it with a 30% odd margin. If that were the case, we would have put up not 2 machines, but 5 machines. However, we had to assume that the whole competition and the whole world is blind and simply doesn't see this product. So simply, you have to adopt some assumptions, and these are the assumptions we adopted building our strategy. This is a company which is at the level of about 12%, not several dozen percent, if we talk about the margin rates. But we have to bear in mind that whenever opportunity knocks, we have to make use of it, and that's what we showed in 2022 and earlier in 2021, 2020. That was COVID, the Suez Canal incident, and the war that broke out later. And so some events are simply unpredictable at the point when we create the forecast, the budget. So these are the events that, using your skills, using your expertise, can be made use of. And so we have brought much higher profits, and we have been able to pay much higher dividend compared to the previous and compared to the strategy assumptions. So this is the most important piece of information I wanted to give you today, namely that we are not terribly worried that 2023 is lower than 2022. I repeat, 2022 was exceptional, so we are not worried that 2023, according to the forecast, won't be as high. But the important thing is to keep the expertise, the skills in the company, to have these assets ready and to have the skills in place in the company, the expertise, because 2023 seems to already be a year of a crisis. This is. As we look forward, we see this, but the point is to do this decently next year, but to keep, I reiterate, to keep all the skills, all the competencies in our company, because we have proven to you that if the wind blows in the right direction, then we are capable of earning a lot of money for the shareholders. And this is the message I wanted to give you, and now I'd like to pass to the presentations of the individual segments. So the gentleman here will tell you what we will be dealing with in 2023, how I want to approach it. I believe we are approaching this tough year responsibly and honestly towards the shareholders, and we are in for really hard work to make all this happen, to fulfill these goals.
So thank you very much. And now let us move to individual operating segments. Let's start from Piotr Wysocki. I give you the floor, Piotr. Okay, as the CEO has already mentioned, the record-breaking year also for the extruded products segment. So the results we've attained this year, we had never attained before, historically speaking. A strange year, broken down into two parts, actually. The first half, where we made the most, if not all of the positive opportunities. You could virtually sell everything at any price whatsoever, while the other half of the year was marked by the beginning of the decrease trend in terms of the orders being placed due to the very fact that the customers simply ceased to receive orders themselves internally. Now, if you have a look at the graph on your right-hand side, namely the billets and the behavior of the billets there, it clearly represents the whole year. We are talking about a 30% drop in terms of the price of a billet, which is due to the demand, obviously, that broke down significantly. And I'm talking about the breakdown of about 30%. So the adjustment in terms of the increased trend, you can also see at the mid of at the forecast for 2023. You can see that the orders will decrease in the numbers. And that will also be reflected in the next slide. We want to produce even more in tons. We want to implement further activities in order to win the market. Well, obviously, if we have some projections, we have to bear in mind that the profit obviously may fall. So we have to make up for the lost opportunity somewhere. In terms of negative, bad things that will strike us within the next couple of months and will have a deep impact on the margin, that's the energy prices, obviously. Across the group, the extruded product segment is the biggest consumer of electricity, of natural gas. 70% of all the price rises across the group are actually consumed by the extruded product segment. In plus, we can say about a further development and progress of electromobility. Thinking about the whole automotive industry, the sector is behaving in a very non-uniform way. This is a very broad sector, from buses to passenger cars, obviously, to even bikes. However, e-mobility boosts projects that we once initiated, once launched, and they will go full steam in 2023, hopefully to bring some significant income. Stable demand in terms of hard alloys. That's also very important, but this is also related to the geopolitical situation. That's something that is inextricably linked with the war in Ukraine. Hard alloys, as of now, for the armament industry, well, you can sell a lot of these, virtually any amount. This is true frenzy in the armament, in the weaponry industry, as far as the purchase of hard alloys is concerned. Now, as regards the crisis year, we really want to make the most of this opportunity and sell more. For what reasons mainly? Well, we have the extrusion presses fully loaded, the efficiency grows, we have better yield, the purchasing is more efficient. Full load on extrusion presses leads to full efficiency and high performance of facilities. We want to achieve 90,000 tons, 6,000 tons more. So being within the capital group and having Aluprof within the group, we can see the shift in the tonnage that was purchased outside. We simply couldn't make up with the production in 2022 to cater to the needs of Aluprof. So Aluprof bought some things outside. Some of the increase out of the 6,000 tons is again shifted back to the extruded product segment. Additionally, having a look at the actual trends that we want to get the tons from, and thinking about this market is actually marked by a decreased trend, which is a big challenge to all of the commercial stuff. This has been well thought of. We can see the perspective. We can see where we can get the volume from. We can get from export. We want to protect our leader position in the aluminium products. We want to grow in export. Our strategy used to be the redeployment of some individual tradespeople in neighboring countries, in Germany in the first place. This is our main market. So our operations are aimed at winning the market, being strong in the market, because we know the trends will reverse at certain point and we'll definitely earn better money. Thinking of the record-breaking year, this year, we are actually expecting a difficult year in 2023. However, thinking about the strategy of individual extruded products manufacturers, we follow the strategy basically. We say that our strategy extends till 2025. So the strategy that we demonstrated 3 years ago, we are delivering on that. Comparing 2023 to 2023, yes, we may reach actually slightly lower results, but I suppose that will be an exceptional year, historically speaking, because as far as the extruded product segment in Grupa Kęty, I think that would be but a single decrease year over 10 years of increased trend. As far as investment is concerned, we slightly moved the extrusion presses on account of the market condition, the market situations. However, we are not abandoning these investments. We believe that in the second half of 2023, there should be some rebound. There should not be, obviously, any explosion in terms of investment, but at least the market should come to satisfactory levels, especially compared to the first half of 2022, where we also invest according to our strategy. We keep investing in components, as we refer to. However, we are basically talking about investing in production of aluminium components for the automotive industry, especially for electromobility segment. That will be it from me. Thank you very much. Let us now move to a discussion on the assumptions for the projections for aluminium systems segment. Tomasz Górela, I give you the floor. Good morning, everybody. Before I move to discussing projections for the next year, a couple of words to sum off the year that is about to end, the year 2022. Similarly to the entire capital group, it was a special record-breaking year for us, with revenues exceeding 2.4 billion, EBITDA at the level of 360 million. As I've already mentioned, these are record-breaking results, utilized mainly as in the extruded product segment. In the first half, also in our segment, it was a very dynamically changing year, record-breaking 6 months, and significantly more difficult second part of the year. Let alone the quantity drops of several dozen percent on a year-to-year basis, which made the result at the end of the year very good. Still, probably less than we expected, having analyzed the results from the first half of the year. Unfortunately, the deteriorating situation in the construction market had an impact on that. You've all been tracking all the communication, all the media releases, and you obviously know about the focus and projections for this sector for the next year. We can just make a reference to some figures, information from the media. The sheer number of building permits issued are marked by several dozen percent in drop in terms of the sheer number of the permits. Well, unfortunately, next year is obviously something to tackle. The situation that affected us in the third and fourth quarter this year will probably also continue and extend over the entire next year. We are expecting more than a dozen, if not several dozen percent in drop in investment in the construction industry. I'm talking as a director of sector that represented 30% of the market share in Poland for aluminium products and the roller blind component production segment. So our market analyses are very precise. Mainly for the very fact that we have a different perception of the export market next year, what we're expecting in terms of our sales, internal sales, to be 6-7% less on account of the fact that a fair share of our customers export their products, that our customers and also we will probably make use of the increasing economy in export markets, especially in markets where they have already launched or are planning to launch some programs to increase spending on thermal upgrading of buildings, because these are actually the trends and programs that have already been prepared in some Western European countries. We want to grow as we have. We want to have our share in the export market. I'm mainly talking about the Western European market, but also the Balkans as well. That's one of the markets we have been keeping a tight eye on for more than 1,000 years, one that's been very dynamically developing. We have some share in the markets of individual countries we think are as a very prospective market about the Balkans. However, we're not disregarding mature markets, including the UK market, where this year's sales significantly increased to 200 million zlotys. Starting from the next year, we are planning to grow that. That's why we decided to implement further products and certify them for the British market to reach an individual customer, the consumers, which we haven't done already. We haven't done yet. We are mainly recognizable in the UK market as a supplier of components for public utility buildings, office buildings. However, we've already prepared a plan that should allow us to actually reach individual consumers, the end users that need our products for the residential housing, for the standalone or semi-detached houses. Next year, we would also like to achieve successfully the launch of further new products we've been developing on a regular basis. We are introducing from 500 to 700 new items in our price list yearly. The groups that we should rely on in terms of our growth over the next years is mainly the production of fire-hardened glass, As we've informed you last year, that's what we started doing last year. So starting from November, this is the glass we've been selling to the market. So we're talking about the big, really quantities. I'm talking about the fire retardant glass or fireproof glass. Additionally, we are adding new pergola systems or the solar panel twin roll products. This is a kind of rollerblade slash shade product. These are just a few of the innovations we really want to reach our customers with. We want to be present with all those innovative products in the UK market. So even though the market is really dwindling and will in the next year, we want to achieve more than 2,350 million in terms of a sales. So the estimated drop compared to this year is about 6%. Unfortunately, in terms of a competitive pressure as far as prices are concerned, that will probably prohibit us from attaining the EBITDA comparable to this year. The margin, estimated margin being several percent lower than this year, 1.5 lower than this year. So the EBITDA expected is roughly 360 million Polish zlotys. Sorry, it's 313 million zlotys. Sorry for that. Shortly about the investments. Mainly, the investment moved from this year related to the investing in the Złotów plant, which we have already informed you about. Conscious about the weakness of the market and the necessity to shift some production capabilities, we decided to move by 2 quarters the commencement of the construction works on this unit. However, we already selected the general contractor. We are currently performing preparatory works, and we'll definitely launch the works in the first quarter. The closure being planned for the end of 2023, the full launch with full production capacity to be reached by the end of the first quarter 2024. And I suppose that would be it as of now from me. Thank you very much.
Now we should pass to the third segment, flexible packaging. And Rafał Lechowicz, the president of that Aluprof segment of flexible packaging. Now, before I pass to the budget presentation for 2023, just like the previous speakers, I wanted to give you a couple of words summing up the year which is about to end, 2022. Well, it was abundant in a number of extraordinary events, which actually helped to make decisions, to make optimum decisions at the optimum time with a high efficiency. And we also, thanks to that, achieved unprecedented financial results. And the sales volume will have exceeded 1.5 billion zlotys this year. 300 million zlotys is operating profit and 330 million zlotys EBITDA. And I would just like to point out very clearly that these are forecasts, because as you remember perfectly well, in the foodstuffs manufacturing industry, actually estimating the Christmas and New Year period is virtually impossible. Our customers are unable to determine their actual demand for packaging. Hence, this result continues to be open and open-ended. And I believe that 2022 will go down in history, not only due to the spectacular financials, but also and mainly perhaps due to the fact that there has been a clear acceleration in the pace of packaging structures launched on the market. Conventional structures manufactured successfully for a couple of decades started to be replaced on a large scale by cutting-edge solutions, environmentally friendly solutions. And in the same period, and let me have the slide, together with our customers, at the avant-garde of the changes I talked about, we managed to actually look at a couple of hundred projects whose examples you can see in the slide presented here. The changes are going generally in the following direction. Where possible, multi-material packaging is being replaced with laminates based on paper, laminated products based on paper, refined paper, either with thermal hardened varnish or paint or polymer or thin polymer layers, and actually where a high barrier rate is required, aluminium foil and polyester film is actually eliminated from that. So new laminates are based most often on PP film, very sophisticated PP or PE film. And I just want to remind you that the development of manufacturing and refinement of these films, this is what the segment has been investing over the last couple of years. So let me have the next slide. Ladies and gentlemen, the new year brings about new challenges, and definitely we will keep working with our partners, with our business partners, on recomposing the market to make sure that the packaging we launch is as environmentally harmful as possible, to has the smallest possible impact on natural environment. And we already have cutting-edge machine stock which fits within the trends I've talked about. And what is also very important, experienced and highly professional manufacturing and process staff. And a big challenge in the implementation of simple, uniform, homogeneous structures and environmentally friendly structures, this is based on shortening the supply chain of value added within the segment. Unfortunately, this leads to a decrease in the margins generated, and this happens also due to the fact that increasingly often our structures are based on semi-finished products, which we have to buy from suppliers indicated by our customers at a specifically defined price. And this actually makes us and other packaging manufacturers, well, processors of the materials entrusted to us. Unfortunately, as the President has mentioned at the start, there is also another segment under pressure, the PP film segment. This is another segment of ours, and demand for PP film started to decrease already in Q3 2022, and I informed you about this after Q3 at the conference summing up Q3. Unfortunately, the situation has not changed so far. It is estimated that the demand for PP in Europe is lower than the record demand, obviously negatively, is lower than the record figure in the crisis of 2008. That was the record, the negative record, so it is lower. And obviously, this is not unrelated to the reduction of the use of plastic in nearly all fields of life. Despite, however, these negative market trends I've been talking about, the segment is actually, it remains ready to fulfill all the basic financial parameters assumed for 2023 in the long-term strategy 2021-2025, which is still in force. And consequently, we are assuming that sales next year will exceed 1,150,000,000 zlotys, while EBITDA will reach 195 million zlotys, which will be 4 million higher versus the strategy assumption in the strategy for 2023. Let's have the last slide. Ladies and gentlemen, we will keep working at a high 84% level of utilization of the production capacities we have. As far as the planned investments are concerned, they will amount, in accordance to with the assumption of the strategy, it will be 15 million. You can see 19.7 here because 4.7 of this is the amount which actually is carried over to complete the investments we started in 2022, in the year which is about to end. So 15 million new investments. This is all as far as I'm concerned. Thank you for your attention, and I remain available to you during this conference until it finishes. Thank you very much. And now we will pass to the next part, which will be presented by Mr. Rafał Warpałowski, member of the management board and CFO of the company. Ladies and gentlemen, hello. And before we comment on the consolidated figures for 2022, I just wanted to give you 2 words about the macroeconomic assumptions underlying our budget. And as usual, we made use of, within the scope of the general global parameters such as the growth pace and foreign exchange rates, we used the forecasts from several dozen financial institutions seeking to obtain an average. And it seems that we will be working in an environment of high interest rates and high inflation. However, there will be a significant slowdown of economic growth, both in Poland and in the European markets, which are our main export markets. Now, as far as raw materials are concerned, the basic raw materials we use in our production, we assume a certain stabilization compared to the levels we saw in October and in November also. So the budget creates neither significantly larger revenues from sales or a significantly larger impact on the reported results due to the fluctuations in raw materials prices, due to the volatility in raw materials prices. But compared to the average for the whole of 2022, this is more or less 15% less in Polish zlotys, if we talk about figures in terms of aluminium and the petrochemical products we use in production. So, summing up the consolidated results, next slide, both 2022 against the budget for that year and the budget for the subsequent year, as the President has said, we have already exceeded our very ambitious budgetary assumptions versus what the company has today, namely all the production capacities over 800 million of assumed EBITDA. We have exceeded it by around 200 million zlotys. So this all happened in the first half of the year. The second half of the year was much closer to the budget, and even Q4 was or has been, as we have already signaled, below the budget assumptions. And so as a result, we can say that with if we do not take into account one-off events, this budget was our ambitious base for the preparation of the budget for the coming year. And so net of one-off events, that is. And what we predict for this first half of the year, the effects of the slowdown, we have drafted a budget for 2023, which means, again, about 12% less, 721 million EBITDA. This is, as we said, in line with the strategy. So we assume that these results will be obtained in a deteriorating, in a tough environment, however, at the level in line with our strategy. Financial expenses, these will be an important element affecting our profit and loss. And what we assume in the budget is interest rates on credit, on loans and credit, and this will take into account the lower tax rate, the effective tax rate. This is lowered by around 30 million zlotys because the investments we planned in the aluminium system segment and the extruded product segment will be eligible to tax relief, and we'll be able to recognize this as a tax asset. And so the next slide documents the cost, the expenses of our operational expenses. And this translates into the possibility of obtaining profitability. As I said, raw materials, 15%. This is, well, a fixed element of the composition of our products. And then we have the impact of macroeconomic factors, what I mentioned already at the start. And then we have the main cost items, energy up by more or less 100 million zlotys. This will be a result, as you know, of the dramatic increases in energy prices already seen in 2022. Now this trend has come down a bit and even has reversed over the last couple of months. However, we will no longer have this benefit which we had in 2022 thanks to earlier securing of the prices, and we are coming back to levels close to the market levels. And this is mainly an effect of the changes in the price of these utilities, only slightly a volume-related effect. Now, two more significant items, employee benefits and third-party services. This is a similar approach. We assume in a situation of high inflation and high changes in the level of remuneration objectively in the market, objectively present in the market, it seems that we'll have to address our needs too in this field, and hence these assumptions reflecting the market trends, these assumptions related to the items I've mentioned. Next slide shows us the summing up of the financial activities, and good news here, very good news here. This year, with the record EBITDA, we will deliver around 550 million zlotys of cash flows on operational activities. However, in the budget, despite the lower profit, these cash flows will be nearly 850 million zlotys, and this is due to the fact that we are expecting reverse trends in terms of working capital. And this year it has been growing very strongly, 300 million zlotys nearly. Next year its release in the amount of around 185 million zlotys is planned. And as far as investments go, we can say that investments planned in the strategy for the years 2022-2023 in the total amount will be similar to those implemented in 2022-2023. However, we changed the schedules a bit in response to the market environment, namely about 170 million zlotys. These are investments which we did not actually implement consciously. In fact, in 2022, we are moving them to 2023, and these are mainly investments increasing our production capacities. And we believe that this will reflect in a better manner the market demand for our products. In total, we will spend around 390 million zlotys on investments. And the third main item of cash flows is dividend. And we have kept in this project kept to the guidance, kept to the assumptions in underlying the strategy, 85% of consolidated net profit, consolidated in the form of dividend from the previous year. So as you can see, this is nearly 560 million zlotys. In total, this will make our debt increase by around 200 million zlotys from 1.250 million to around 1.450 million next year. And the net debt to EBITDA ratio, due to the lower profitability, will amount to 2, and this is still a level we consider acceptable and safe. And using the opportunity, I will say that the structure of our debt, both in terms of the term structure, of the maturity structure, and of the currencies, will be very similar. And this year we have achieved the assumptions, so we have organized credit for investment credit for the extruded product segment and the aluminum system segment, so the situation is stable and safe.
Ważne jak same wyniki, dla nas część naszego budżetu to są założenia odnośnie naszego zrównoważonego rozwoju. Deklarowaliśmy je w strategii, deklarujemy je każdorocznie. Jesteśmy na drodze do spełnienia założeń przewidzianych na rok 2025. W 3 takich grupach, jeśli chodzi o środowisko, to mamy wskaźniki, cele właściwie, jakie sobie stawiamy, żeby obniżyć naszą emisyjność, jeśli chodzi o CO2. Także robimy już zupełnie rzeczy dotyczące bardzo specyficznie naszej działalności, czyli coraz większy udział złomów w wyrobach, które wyciskamy, czyli we wlewkach low carbon Kęty. Mamy także cele i zamiary, które tutaj prezentujemy, dalszego zwiększenia ilości budynków, które są certyfikowane jako te przyjazne środowisku, a także w obszarze segmentu opakowań większa możliwość
Packaging systems are concerned. So this is also something that is in our plan, namely the increase of the scrap in the packaging that we produce. As far as the involvement in some individual local initiatives, as far as the working with the group, actually there will be twice as many of the initiatives, nearly 70 this year, or actually next year, which is also related to the anniversary of Grupa Kęty, the 17th anniversary of foundation. However, we are focusing on two indicators that pertain directly to our personnel, ourselves, namely labor safety and stability of personnel turnover. We are a tech company, so we obviously are very preoccupied with safety and security. This is a very difficult to attain, however, very important job to do. As far as the third group of indicators, stable dividend policy, which I have already mentioned, is something that we want to sustain. Obviously, yes, we are going to analyze the situation on an ongoing basis, and in this project we attained 85% payoff of dividend. Also, year by year, we increase the number of vendors that confirm that they comply with the standards and principles that we disseminate and promote. So obviously, also in this third category, we are expected to grow. And now just a couple of words of wrap up to highlight what the CEO mentioned at the beginning. Our two main strategies are the one already completed and executed and the strategy proposed at the end of 2020. We can clearly see that the 3 years, on account of the reasons that we always highlighted, were by all means unique, very special. We couldn't have expected such a sheer scale of different turbulences of global reach. However, within this turbulent environment, we could actually operate even more swiftly and efficiently than others, delivering even high results. What we want to show is that this stable and sound strategy is something that is not obstructed, not endangered. We are still on the safe side. We are actually happy about the recent 3 years, very special, unique years, that we decided to also share the profit with the shareholders. Obviously, this is time marked by significant uncertainty. Uncertainty is something that actually is inherent to our existence on the market. We see the threats, however, we believe in our product. We believe that the strategy assumptions, the premises that we decided to assume will not be changed, and the financial layer. As far as this is concerned, we still believe that the dividend policy is very important to us, and I think a significant value to all the shareholders. So our financial indices, those that we have presented, let us think, let us suppose that it can be successfully implemented in the future. Thank you very much, and thank you. So that's what we have, what concludes the presentation part. And let us now move to the questions that you can post on the chat in the app. We have already received a couple of questions that you have submitted before. So let's start with the following general inquiry, namely the one related to the effect of the National Recovery Fund being or not being achieved and its impact on the company. Well, a great question indeed. If you asked us about, because our budget is very realistic, if you ask us whether green lights can be expected in terms of the National Recovery Plan, we would say the following things. It's hardly imaginable that our customers would make any initiatives in terms of investment where they are supposed to face interest rates of credits at more than 12%. No hope there, definitely. We had hope, and we still have hope that there will be an agreement with the European Union in terms of the National Recovery Plan, because it would definitely mobilize, they would definitely start the flow of funds to individual municipalities and communes. That would probably translate into certain specific increase in terms of investment in infrastructure, which would be a good sign for the Kęty Group. I suppose for some there's maybe a short-term perspective, for others it may be long-term perspectives. However, indeed, if the funds flow, I suppose that would be more than welcome, and not just for the entire economy of Poland, for all the Polish people, but also for the Kęty Group. We would definitely benefit from that. Depending on the distribution of the funds, once the plans are approved in individual administrative units and individual sectors of the economy, the implementation thereof, I suppose, may just start at the second half of next year, the last quarter of the next year. So I suppose we should not expect any spectacular outcomes, even if the National Recovery Plan is actually put into implementation. Okay, now more specific questions. We're talking about good economic conditions concerning the extruded products, especially concerning hard alloys. Is there any non-investment capacity to increase the production and sales volume in this respect? No. To give you the brief answer, without investment, yes, you can implement certain specific, let's say, performance-targeted programs, efficiency-related programs, but this is a completely different story compared to soft alloys. With the 440 press, the one that is going to be launched in the end of 2023, that it may interchangeably produce certain other alternative alloys other than hard alloys. This is a very complex product. Well, here's the press, there's the press, obviously, however. But you've already done some things this year, right? Some, let's say, small steps aimed at increasing the efficiency. Yes, in terms of performance, we've done a few things. So, efficiency-oriented activities. As far as the tonnage, as far as the volume is concerned, that actually is up to big investments. We are obviously keeping track of the market for quite some years. It always was problematic. Now, on account of the arms industry and the war in Ukraine, that was a big problem actually. Was in the backlog, but still, this year you could really sell a lot. You could see the fall of products from Russia. Russia used to be the biggest supplier, the biggest vendor of hard alloy-based products into the European market. So that always also had an impact. Okay, thank you. Next question. Which component of the projection do you consider to be the most risky one concerning the projected results? Where do you expect, let's say, the biggest field for risk that some of the components is not attained, having a potentially negative impact? So if I was to answer this question, where the biggest risk is to be sought, I suppose the biggest challenge, not risk, is to make up for the lost opportunities with the export. The drops that we can see in the construction industry in Poland, I think this is the sphere that for the SSA, actually, this is something that we should really focus on attaining with the aluminum system segment in export markets. We have already established some, let's say, representations, agencies and subsidiaries, individual local market. However, it's definitely not going to be easy because in Western Europe, we're not talking about a situation where the markets are very hot in investment. You can just, enter and start selling your own merchandise. No, the struggle is going to be really, really harsh. I think the export market is where we can seek some new investments. In the Balkans also, in Slovenia, for instance, with new subsidiary. In Germany, we are going to definitely seek some solutions to increase our volume, sales volume, for packaging, for instance. As Director Lachowicz has mentioned, he has actually been struggling for quite some year to really get on a train directed to the station, change of the packaging format in terms of the flexible packaging segment. I could be speaking of actually totally disconnecting from the market trends. Fortunately, all of our process engineers and technology engineers, all those that design our packaging, they did their fair share of work. They have managed. So they have already proposed eco-friendly solutions that really cater to some, or actually meet some environmental standards. However, as far as BOPP, well, this is a big question mark there. I just hope for the segment to attract as much orders as possible in order to comply with the budget assumptions. Another question. Thank you for the answer to the previous one. Now about the EBITDA margin. One of the participants of today's conference meeting draws a conclusion that historically speaking, across the recent dozen or so years, we have never had such a low margin as the one planned for 2023. Even in year 2008, in the crisis year, even then was the margin higher. Is it on account of a very conservative approach? And if so, can we expect that at the end of the day, the margin would be slightly higher? Well, let's put it like this. We should keep in mind that we definitely had, well, we once had a definitely more limited capabilities. We were a very compact facility. When we were meeting in the conference, there were just a couple of persons, a couple of entities, short meetings, not a big conference room, a conference call, short getting out of debt strategies, a very easy to attain consolidation policies. So it was easier to get support for our customers, especially those that had a harsh time with paying. We were kind of a credit bank actually there. So we could actually, we were eligible to and entitled to actually demand higher margin. However, we are now a big capital group operating in different areas. Our impact is not equal. We are not operating on the same field as it used to be, mainly based on the Polish market, where we get in terms with individual customers, and we got in terms with individual customers. Now that's a big unknown. The next year is a big unknown. As I've already mentioned, the film sector, for instance, again, you just can't struggle for your margin if you struggle for market share. Now we are focused on market share fight, and our main job is not having a look at a single year, because you are perfectly aware of the fact that if it was a dead or alive situation, be or not be there, it was not about cutting costs or cutting costs, some layoffs, because these are short-term solutions. The management board would probably show you some better budget for next year. However, we definitely wouldn't get unscathed from the execution of next year. We would really get some bumps and some beating. And with the prospects for the next year, we would really be lacking process engineers, we would be lacking development, investment, we would be lacking products, and we did not abandon anything. With full capacities, with full competence, we want to get through the year 2023, and I suppose that would be but a single year across the entire history of the company. So I don't think we should focus on the negative prospects for the next year, because if our, let's say, component budgets allowed us to set up the whole comprehensive budget, we have no right to paint our grass green to color up the prospects and then offer you something, because it has never been in DNA of this company, neither is it in the nature of this management board. We are always honest, straightforward, and blunt. How we see it, what we see in the future, and what we are showing to you is something that we learn from our salespeople, from production engineers, and so on and so forth. Anything hidden, if you would be looking at, you won't find. We don't conceal anything. We are perfectly open towards our shareholders. I'm not just talking about the shareholders that our survival depends on, but just talking about Mr. Smith, who has bought 10 shares of our group and thinks that, yeah, it would be nice to get some dividend every single year. We want to be fair to every single person. That's our current state of knowledge. That's what we are presenting to you right now. Just a couple of words to add on this note, especially considering the very specifics of our segment. Let me just tell you that over the recent 7 years, Alprov was buying aluminium at 10 to 12 zlotys per kilogram. Now we are talking about 20 to 21 zlotys per kilogram. Obviously, over the recent 18 months, we implemented 4 rises. So I believe that our products also we got to the cap, actually. That's a level that is hardly acceptable by the consumer, by the customer. So the prospects of further rises is very limited, even though we are expecting further rises in terms of costs, labor costs, energy costs. Now imagine that the margin we've been talking about, or we talked about 2, 3, 4 years ago, considering the changes in prices of raw materials, it simply prohibits us from ensuring the margin as high as before. That's also one of the risks you inquired about. Any further increase of prices of raw materials will also be encumbered with significant risk, and something that actually would prevent us from raising our prices. And that obviously has an impact on the margin planned for next year. Maybe for flexible product segment, a couple of words about this matter. The CEO has already basically replied to this question on our behalf. Still, I'd like to go back to BOPP film. So our business, on account of the extraordinary happenings over the recent years, generated very high EBITDA. 150 million last year, about 180 million this year, preemptively answering a question about the consolidated EBITDA of the segment. Next year, we are planning to have this index on a level of 50 million zlotys, which follows the strategy assumptions, as well as the things that we assumed when we were making a decision to invest. Interesting information for all of you, since you participated and kept track of the investment since the very beginning of that, at least most of you did. You surely remember that that's a greenfield investment that we started in 2017, an investment which had its return on investment total ROI of 40% in 2020, which is something that I really wish to all the people investing in Poland. Thank you. Just to wrap it up, for extruded product, can the margin be higher? Well, we will do anything we can to have it. We designed our budget based on the sales plans on specific customers and their needs, especially those forecasted for the next year. The information about the prices that can realistically pay. And that's what the margin is as of now, realistically speaking, but obviously we'll do our best to grow it.
Just to supplement on this crisis year, 2008, back then the prices of aluminium were nearly $1,000 lower, which evidently influences the percentage of the margin, because then automatically the raw materials base grows. So this is also an element that needs to be taken into account, comparing margin in percentage terms, not in value terms. The larger the raw materials base, the lower the percentage margin for us. In 2008, the raw materials base was much lower, and so it was easier to achieve a margin at the level of 15 or even 16%, which we effectively recorded in 2008. Currently, the level we are forecasting, namely around 14%, is actually achieved with different macroeconomic assumptions. Another question for the flexible packaging segment. The strategy until 2025, does it assume such a quick passage of a switch of the packaging market to low margin products, or the strategy until 2025, when you say it's not at risk, you're assuming that other segments will make up for the result of the flexible packaging segment? Well, the margin in the flexible packaging segment is not low. That's the first thing we need to say. In the budget for 2023, we assume that it will reach 19% of EBITDA, which is a much higher result than the market. And what else did you ask about? Well, the question was generally about whether we assume this switch to environmentally friendly packaging in the strategy. Well, of course, it's a compilation of the BOPP margin and flexible packaging margin. So BOPP was assumed in the strategy, it was 13% EBITDA, that was the assumed margin. In packaging, it was 23%. So whether we assumed it, yes, we did, but we will be watching this carefully, the pace at which the market transition will progress at. So currently it's 15%. It essentially happened in 1 year in terms of printed packaging, and these are the solutions which are homogeneous, which are environmentally friendly, which are characterized by lower value added. But the margins continue to be very satisfactory indeed, and I assume that next year we will be working on an average margin of 17% EBITDA versus 19% assumed in the strategy. But these are obviously different packaging items. This packaging is simply much more expensive, so a whole lot of profit, a whole lot of EBITDA generated is higher than that assumed in the strategy. So this compilation is positive at the end of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you. I just want to remind you that in the strategy published, the goal for flexible packaging segment for 2025 at the EBITDA level, that was 202 million zlotys. So leaving aside the percentage rates, which we emphasize all the time, it depends on the raw materials base in terms of the profit, or the bulk of it supposed to have been generated by the flexible packaging segment. We are actually very close to this goal, 3 years ahead, actually. Thank you very much. And another question. Can the amount of spending on research and development be quantified in the segments? Is there a fixed policy, for instance, saying that every year X% is spent on R&D? Well, this concerns to the largest extent this aluminum systems segment in terms of R&D, because this is what we do in the group, actually, to the largest extent. We do not envisage fixed percentage rates in relation to spending in this area. But in the budget, every time we take into account the work planned for the subsequent year related to launch of new products, to testing thereof in Poland and abroad. Hence, the investment plan related to launching new products and spending is different each time, and it is adapted to the needs of the market, domestic and export markets. So the answer is no, we do not have clearly defined and fixed shares of spending on R&D. So that this concerns essentially all the segments, because it's not a one fixed amount which would depend on the EBITDA or net profit generated. This is every time drafted as the budget is drafted, and this is related to investments, and this is an item related to development. So it sometimes happens, as it has happened over the last couple of years in the case of packaging, to catch up with the trend and to actually be in touch with the environmentally friendly directions in packaging, then the spending will be higher than in previous years, and it's definitely the case. But if we're talking about the extruded product segment, a laboratory has been established. And as the automotive order volume was increasing, this activity, involves higher spending. But as the President, as Mr. Grela mentioned earlier, this is not a fixed figure, which we would have in the budget every year permanently. Thank you. A question about the distribution of EBITDA profit in 2023 versus this year. We are talking about an improvement in the second half of 2023. So are we supposed to expect that the figure, the EBITDA reported in the second half of next year will be higher than the comparable figure for the second half of this year? Well, the distribution this and next year will not be equal between the two halves of the year. We had 600 million H1 and 400 million H2 this year, just to remind you. So second half was worse. In 2023, we assume that the first half of the year will be worse because this has been actually discussed today. This is what the market will be like. So this will be around 300 million, and the second half will be close to H2 2022. So it will be more like 400. So we have 6 to 4 2022 and 3 to 4 next year, we could say. So this is the kind of direction. So a reverse trend. Thank you. And energy costs now. What share of energy and gas in the forecast is assumed will be actually purchased on the spot market, and what has already been secured? Well, we've already secured around 3/4 in terms of gas for 2023, and nearly 60% in terms of electricity. And having said that, we are not planning spot purchases of the whole amount that is still lacking, but in accordance with the policy we have adopted, we have some successive stages and some periods in which we will be supplementing this level. And obviously, today we can say that over the last couple of weeks, we could see that it's worth waiting a while because the trend might be better than it was in the previous month. But before the end of the year, successfully and cyclically, systematically, we will be we will have secured the whole year before the end of the year. Thank you. Another question related to finances. What is the vulnerability of the EBITDA guidance to its exposure to changes of, let's say, 10% change of the exchange rate of the US dollar to the Polish zloty? As you know, we generate euro and we spend dollars. So our exposure to the dollar is a short position. So 10% is around 0.45 zloty. So a fluctuation, a depreciation of the zloty is a cost of around 50 million zlotys a year if the dollar goes up by 45 groszy. And so, however, this would have to be a deviation only with regard to the dollar. So the zloty would have to be depreciated or appreciated to the dollar, but also to the euro, because it's a proportional change towards the dollar and to the euro. This exposure kind of is set off mutually. So it's low, let's say. This is around several million in currency, let's say. Thank you. Another financial question. This estimated figure for Q4, did it actually include one-off events in any of the segments? No, this is a result which comprises the 11 months actually and the forecast for December. We're not expecting any extraordinary one-off events. Another question concerning finances. Is the group planning a decrease in debt for the long term? And to what extent is the increase in interest rates influencing the financial cost, the financial expense of the company. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have quite a stable policy in this respect. One of the key elements of this and of the strategy of each year's budget is payment of dividend. At the same time, we say that we generate sufficiently large profits to be able to have a balance sheet item that allows us to organize financing of our investments. So we are financing our activity with debt, that is borrowing from banks, and we share our dividend with the shareholders. So this is our standard policy, and obviously the level of debt in a year in which EBITDA is lower than in the previous year, for instance, due to this fact, the net debt to EBITDA ratio is increasing. As far as interest rate costs are concerned, we assumed, as you can see in the income statement, which has been presented in P&L, the financial expenses stated, the result on financial activities, 92 million. This is practically interest. So this shows us that we have more or less 8% cost of debt, and this is a certain compilation of debt in Polish zlotys and a quarter or 30% which is debt in euro, and this makes the interest effectively slightly lower than if we incurred all this debt in zlotys. Thank you. Now for the extruded segment, extruded product segment, do you see, the influx of profiles from Turkey as a long-term structural problem, or is it only temporary? Or are you actually expecting any systemic measures to be adopted to reduce this influx? Well, we've had a lot of this from Turkey because actually, the sections that came to Europe was about 500,000 tons, and we see that this trend will actually stay there in 2023. And looking at the scale of investments in Turkey, this might keep developing further. This is only the question of how Europe will approach this to the import of these Turkish profiles to Europe. And we are actually working through the Polish Association of Aluminium Manufacturers. We are working through this European Association and Polish Association, and this is a known problem concerning these sections. So we are working with the manufacturers to work on demand, and sometimes these are dumping prices of the sections that actually come to Europe from Turkey. This is how we perceive them. Thank you. So, in the guidance for 2023, the group assumed a 9% increase in employee benefits. What does the change look like in the number of FTE jobs year on year? This is a very slight change on the main results in the extruded product segment area in relation to the planned investments. This is on the scale of the whole group. This is around 5,500 employees. This is around a couple of dozen people, 56 to be exact. Another question concerning the interface between the costs of labor and third-party services. Are we planning any changes in the policy of using agencies in terms of 2023 versus 2022? Will it be a larger scale, a smaller scale? What are the estimated costs versus the planned effective implementation in 2023 versus 2022? In extruded, right, in terms of the extruded product segment, if we want to manufacture more tons versus 2022, we need to have all the machines up and running and running all year round. And on top of that, we have new projects in Slovenia entering the field to 56 people. I'm talking about the staff operating the presses, one press actually, which will be commissioned in March, and the staff operating the line for production for the pieces for Fisker. And if we want to produce 96,000 tons, that is 6,000 tons more than in 2022, we will need people. And the question arises, this outsourcing will be more expensive because, it will be twice the minimum wage, compared to the minimum pay compared to 2022. And outsourcing is based on minimum remuneration. So we assume a decrease in terms of figures, in terms of volume in our segments. So 48% decrease in terms of the number of interim employees, and 3% decrease in terms of manual laborers. Although we are actually launching 2 painting lines next year, so we are moving a large part of the painting services, which used to be outsourced, in-house, actually, insourcing this. And we are reducing, nevertheless, 3% the number of our employees and by 48% the number of interim employees. So the group does not use interim agency, and we actually assume the status quo in terms of the number of employees in our group. Do you have information about the situation of the competitors? In your competitors' companies, are there any decreases in employment expected in 2023 due to the expected decreases in production volumes? Well, as far as the competitors are concerned, the extruded product segment, if we look at the Polish companies, and if we look at European companies, because we also compete on the European market, in some companies there is a significant decrease by several dozen % in orders, which also automatically leads to a decline in employment, in headcount. And we've seen first moves in that direction. People start appearing who already have some experience, and they enter the job market again. This is all linked to volume. So headcount follows volume, the number of tons we produce. As far as the packaging industry is concerned, I have not seen any of our competitors planning downsizing. In our segment, well, I believe that it is worth saying at this point that there are some moves in competing companies related not so much to downsizing, but as you've heard in the official communication, Veka acquired Poncio, producing PV. So a company producing PVC acquired a company producing aluminium in the German market. Hook, one of the domestic manufacturers, was acquired by the Hydro Group. So I am talking about these moves. But as far as downsizing is concerned, on a larger scale than what we expected at Aluprof, the signals we have not seen any. Thank you very much. In 2023, is it possible that a reversal of write-downs on the Borodianka plant will take place? In 2023, if we look at the financial assumptions, there is no possibility of doing that. But we created 50 million in write-downs in Q1, followed by around 30 or 25. We reversed them, and this is only a write-down on PPE, on property, plant and equipment, and we assumed the budget of Borodianka was functioning to a very limited extent, just to keep going somehow, but without a radical change in the situation. So unless the war ends, in terms of figures, this write-down won't be possible to reverse it. Thank you. So currently, the order portfolio, what does it look like? Are we still talking about a couple of weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, or is it longer? if you can comment on this in the individual segments. The extruded product segment, we see early February as the date, but this is distorted quite strongly by the Christmas and New Year's period, and all the overhauls and inspections, planned inspections of equipment and machinery. Usually we do this at the end of the year, early next year. So we have some machines that are already there's a planned outage, and so we will enter the new year with some machines already in maintenance. So this actually makes this vision satisfactory, but we would have to take into account the effect of the New Year's and Christmas break. The Grupa group, the segment of packaging, 2 to 3 weeks, and the BOPP film, this is 2 or 3 weeks, the horizon. Thank you. It's a similar situation when we talk about systems. 2 quarters, we managed to adjust our logistics capacities to the needs of the market, so we came back to a 2-week lead time. So 2 or 3 weeks, this is the horizon we see when we look at our order portfolio currently. Thank you very much. 2023, in the management board's opinion, are we actually reaching the bottom of the overall situation in terms of strategy, or are any other scenarios possible? And this dip will actually continue into 2024. We assume this is the dip already. That we've hit. The 2023 will be the moment when we hit the bottom after this crazy 2022. It will be a natural slowdown. We will have to catch our breath, and hopefully some funds will appear, well, the funds from the European Union actually, and they might lead to 2024 being abundant in orders in the general construction area. Definitely this should help. Thank you. A couple of questions left concerning dividend. It seems that in 2023 a window will open in the market for interesting potential acquisitions. Could this mean that there will be a recommendation that lower dividend be paid compared to what we have in the dividend policy? Well, there's always this agreement of shareholders that if the company actually were to have a very interesting acquisition position, then this conversation is always possible, and this suggestion is always possible on the part of the management board. If this acquisition can't be carried out with own funds or with credit, well, then if to keep a healthy balance sheet, if we were to reduce dividends so as not to pay extra money out of our pockets, then we could hope for this consent on the part of the shareholders, I believe. Now, in relation to what's happening with aluminium and the billet premium, the percentage margin might be a distorted ratio. So could we present the EBITDA margin per ton in the segment? What did it look like historically ever since the strategy started to be implemented, or even before that, and how are we planning to go forward? This is a good question, because the percentage margins in the extruded product segment, they depend on the trading market. So the unit margins are important, which we have been observing for 20 odd years, and which we have assumed in the strategy until 2025. Looking at the spectrum of our audience, because the competitors are also listening. Yeah, I don't want to actually go behind the scenes so much. So we are happy with what we assumed. If we were to divide EBITDA just in a simple manner by the number of tons, you can do it. Okay. Anyone can do it, actually, if they want to. Okay, so let's leave the calculation to the person who asked this question. Now, what about the possibility, well, what about the assumed possibility of carrying over, well, actually transferring the increases in energy costs to the customers, charging them actually with this, because as a matter of principle, costs of energy are not included in pricing formulas, especially in the extruded product segment. So is there any agreement with the customers that the cost of energy will be simply transferred to them? What is the assumption?
So the assumption is that we are trying to transfer the cost of electricity and gas. That's a normal price and pricing policy. In certain cases, the costs of energy, especially in the automotive industry, are detailed. And this is a kind of an automatic process. Obviously, the process of negotiating individual amounts is in progress. However, with regard to the automotive sector, this process is fully transparent, where we are highlighting the increases in energy prices, and the whole industry relies on increases, accepts these increases with regard to other sectors. It's just a matter of some commercial negotiations. We are assuming that we should at least partially transfer these costs on the customers. I'm talking about the rises in electricity costs. Let me just remind you that according to our pricing formula, this processing component includes all costs, including electricity costs that we incur. And that's how we, let's say, adjust prices of our products. On the other hand, what the customer has on their tables, offering from 8 countries of Europe, where including Turkey, with different level of rises of electricity prices is concerned, well, there is a lot to be talking about. However, everything is transparent, everything is clear. If you add the processing costs, raw material costs, and so on and so forth, but I would not like to go deep so much on how you sell things and what you show, what kind of cost you actually display. Piotr, why haven't you participated in the process of the Ponze acquisition? I think that's a question to a different segment. So we knew about the process of acquisition of Ponzio. We were not invited officially to the process, although we were negotiating. We had some talks. Okay, I'm not going to get deeper into that. There are a number of different factors resulting from a long-standing collaboration between Ponzio and Grupa Kęty. Ponzio is a customer. At the same time, they are customers and competitors to Grupa Kęty, which made us not invited into the process. Well, is it a case that the sale allocated in Ponzio is cancelled after Veka's acquisition? Veka is not a manufacturer of aluminium sections, yes, but it may have some impact on the situation. Okay, Ponzio has allocated several dozen, if not several hundreds of in molds. So, with regard to the long-standing collaboration at certain specific distribution parts already well established in terms of quality, our product is very high in terms of market conditions. I think we should just, look for some ambitions, seeking new solutions. What about a case of Ponzio leaving us? What sort of drop in terms of sale, in percentage, are we talking about? Roughly speaking, give or take 1%. 1 to 2%. Okay, thank you. I think one of the last questions here. With regard to the aluminium systems segment, we are assuming 6% drop in revenue. What about the drop or increase in terms of quantities? That's basically the same. We're not expecting any price movements, fine downward adjustment, I suppose, when we are talking about what we have seen in the market and some competition decisions, competition movements, even though, as already mentioned, considering the high gas and electricity prices, it will be extremely difficult to transfer it to the market because, according to me, the prices have already attained the maximum acceptable, customer acceptable level. So I suppose if any adjustments take place, unfortunately, these would be downward adjustments. So shortly speaking, in terms of quantity and quality, we have assumed a similar 6% drop. Let me come back to the Poncio matter once again, so that to make you all fully aware of the situation. It's not the case that we're not keeping track of the process, of the whole situation. However, firstly, the owner of a company that decided to sell its major shareholding package didn't feel that his company, Poncio, should be included in structures of stock-listed company with another system provider, leading system provider, Aluprof being this system leading provider, because that would, endanger the development of the systems of his own progeny, one that he has been building from scratch. So that was the owner's decision to move to Veka, who only works on plastics. At this point, for them, the guideline would be to take over Poncio, and that would simply be more profitable for them to be included in their structure than ours. So, can we understand that the purchase of the company, the acquisition of a company from the aluminium by a company that runs plastics, confirms the good prospects for aluminium? Yes, that's a well thought of decision, including or considering the very fact that there is significantly higher determination on our part to develop, because we have the systems and we have the expertise in the systems. Okay, I suppose that's the optimistic note. And on this optimistic note, we might be getting to the end. We have actually exhausted a part of questions, having confirmed the good prospects for the development. If we haven't answered any of the questions that you wanted to pose, please submit them to my email box. I'll try to arrange for the replies to be provided from all of the management board members. Thank you for participating in this conference, as the CEO has mentioned, in this very hot pre-Christmas time. Would you like to add anything, CEO? I would like to thank everybody for the whole year. I'd like to thank you for being with us. I say thanks to the whole personnel because they're listening to our conference as well. It was a perfect year with some significant achievements, and we have good prospects at the end. We picked up the gauntlet. We are trying to roll up our sleeves and work. And to all of you, Merry Christmas. May your Christmas be calm, spend it in your family moments, and see you next year. All the best. Keep it safe.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We are going to announce the Q3 results for Grupa Kęty S.A. On behalf of the company, we have the whole management board of Grupa Kęty S.A. and the president of the management board, Mr. Lechowicz, who heads the flexible packaging segment, Rafał Lechowicz. And we are going to start today's meeting as usual with the presentation part, and after that you will be able to ask questions and the gentleman will seek to answer them. So, Mr. Dariusz Mańko, President of the Management Board, will start. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The third quarter of 2022 is over. A good quarter for the company. The company 253 million EBITDA, 171 million net profit, which is an excellent result.